Hey, everybody, and welcome to Bold Badass Business. And yes, we're coming to you a couple of minutes late today. It was pretty interesting day today when I walked into my office and one of our rescue dogs had took it upon himself to take everything out of the cupboard, all the snacks. I don't know how many honey buns he ate, but he was cowering. So I had to find my computer under all of this. We're so happy you're here. And in fact, today, you all, we have in the house Judy Baker, who is the book marketing mentor for over a decade. Judy has provided a compass for people with powerful stories to tell. And by the way, that's you listening. That's you. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something that they can share, that you can share, that's going to make all the difference in someone's life. And Judy's also going to share with us a health challenge that brought her into awareness of the importance of sharing your gifts and your experience. So, Judy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Barnsley. I'm so happy to be here. And you are such a kick. I just love you to pieces.
Well, I love you more.
All right. Well,
Seriously, I'm so glad we've been talking about this for a long time and planning this. And when we originally talked, I was just super excited by the whole idea. The book you have or haven't written can save someone's life. So I want to ask you, first of all, in your life, what is the incident that made you love books so much? Or what moment made you love books so much?
the truth of it is, I was very small at the time. I was very curious as a kid. And my father and I used to walk to the library. We had a local library I think it was about a mile and a half from our house. And we would go there all the time. And I discovered the Beatrix Potter books. And I was fascinated. And I actually have a set I have two offices. I have a set in my other office. The pictures, the language, I just went, oh, these were just magical little treasures. And that I think that was the start of it. But everyone in my family loves books. We're all bookaholics. We all read all the time. We have to periodically go, oh, I think it's time to donate some of these to other people because there's not enough room in the house. If we would look like hoarders if we didn't do that. So I've just always been fascinated with books. And then, oh my God, see this? This is my first printed book, and I created this book when I was in high school. I illustrated it. I think you can still see that that's me. It's poetry and some of my drawings, and I took a class, since this is the Bold Badass group, I took a class that was only for boys. And I had to have, and my dad, remember it said, so I had to have my dad come down to the high school. And he said, she's taking that class. Because this is before Title VII. And if you're in the United States, women did not have equal rights. It just wasn't the case. So he said, she's taking that class because I had been cooking since I was 9. And I said, I'm not taking another frickin' home ec class. And this also wasn't college prep, wasn't in my program. And so I said, yeah, I want to learn how to use the typesetter because a friend of mine worked at the company that made it. And I said, I want to learn how to use a printing press. And I did. So that's my story.
Well, that's a great way to start. Is like yeah, not just am I gonna take the fricking class, but I'm gonna do my own book. I'm gonna create my own book. I'm gonna illustrate it. I'm going to write the poetry. You've just reminded me, Judy, I have something similar from high school, but with several people. We did a little magazine, all of us together, and my mother had given this to me recently. She had saved it. So what a beautiful beginning for your love affair with books that you bring to the world. And, I just want to say to everyone listening, I hope that you are thinking about what in your childhood or youthhood brought you to a passion that you have. And maybe you've forgotten about that passion, but I assure you it's still there. And in fact, you can often find the embryo of your wonderful, incredible, profitable business in those early years. So I think about that, everyone. And I hear this all the time, Judy, of people saying, hey, I want to start my own business. I'm not sure what I'll do. And I always say, I want you to look at your early passions. I want you to look at your expertise, and then I want you to find where they intersect. And that's where you get an amazing, 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 business. So let me ask you this. I'm sure the listeners want to know, Judy, after that book, when did you realize you were really meant to help people market their books and get them out there? Because so many people write a book or more, and then it
Mhm.
sits there. It doesn't
Yep.
get out. It isn't shared with others.
This is another kind of a funny story. I was in a Vistage group with I think there were about 10 of us. One was a retired FBI agent who
Mm,
now was writing, he was now writing books about his spaniels. And his wife had a side business of making doggy biscuits. So that was one bill. The other bill in the group was my friend who had created political cartoons when he was in
mhm,
the Air Force during the Vietnam era. And he said, I would like to do a book about the 60s, but
mm.
I don't want to do all the stuff that you have to do for publishing. Would you help me? And so Bill, the FBI agent, said, well, do you know about the Bay Area Independent Publishers Association? And we said, no. It was a real big secret to us. It had been around, but we didn't know about it. And he said, well, they're having a conference this weekend. And so Bill and I look at each other and we go,
Perfect.
okay. Yeah. So we go, and I walked in the door. I had goose flesh. I mean, seriously, the
Uh,
hair on my arms was standing up. I went, all these authors don't know beans about marketing. I mean, there were a couple of them that did, but mostly they were all, okay, authors, most of us are introverts. Most of
mhm.
us are real happy when we're writing by ourselves, but you get us in public and we go like that. So I walked around and I looked at all of the displays. And I'm actually friends with some of the people I met there, Carla King being one of them. And
Mhm.
I went, they need my help. They need my help to help them share their wonderful stories and what they're about, but they don't know how to do it. And I do.
That's
So that's
beautiful.
where it
And
started.
wow, I love that. And everyone who's listening again, it's so interesting because you're almost walking me through, Judy, one of my favorite presentations to give, which is turning your passions into a livelihood. But I want you all to listen to what she said. She looked for what people were asking her to do. Like, I want to write this book. Do you know about this? Do you know about that? She listened to that, and then she listened to what was coming her way, and she showed up. And that's what we've got to
Totally.
do. We have to listen carefully if you want to find your calling. And by the way, your calling isn't just the thing you're doing now. I always know there's another level, right, Judy? Always there's another
Exactly.
level. So your calling is calling you as much as you're calling it. And so it's time to pick up the freaking phone. And you did that, Judy, by going, saying, okay, it's this weekend. This conference is this weekend. Well, let me go. That sounds great. So, what has been one of the most interesting projects you've worked on, and why did you love it?
Oh, well, I have it right here because I was looking at which books really made a difference. This is a book, this is when I was early on shifting from being a graphic designer to being a book marketing mentor. My
Mm,
client was a referral from a friend of mine, and the Caregiver's Challenge was her story. This fits right in. Her story about what happened with her second husband, and he was diagnosed and he was terminal. And
mm,
she was a social worker, and that was the she worked with other people who went through this, but when it was her turn, it was very different. And she realized that most of us don't know what we need to know in order to be a caregiver without burning out, but providing
mhm,
what the person needs from us. And all of the oh my gosh. So, I helped her with shaping the book, which is unusual because I don't typically do that, but I do
mhm,
parts of that. But I helped her shape the book. I laid it out. I did the graphic design for the book. I did the book cover, um, everything, and then we did the marketing materials. And when you are a counselor, a social worker, somebody who has to keep things, confidential, you're not used to telling
mhm.
people, well, I just did this. Well, Marianne was a little different because she also was a good speaker. But I did her sell sheet that, for the book,
Mhm.
had her bio on it. This is very similar to what you need as an author anytime, because it's telling people about the book, it's telling them about you, and then it's telling them how to buy the book. So that
Great.
story, that that really helped me, because then when my husband's father he had Parkinson's, we
Mm,
then knew a lot of the things we needed to do. Because I'm
mm.
going to ask you this question: did you know that power of attorney isn't blanket for everything? You
Oh,
have to have
yeah,
a
you have to have
special
the
one.
financial one, you have to have different ones, and
Yes.
people don't realize that. So, the
Mm-mm.
experience of helping her shape that book actually helped you when it came time, to do some caregiving yourself, or if people in your
Yeah.
family needed to do some caregiving. I love that. It's interesting how our clients can become a reflection of us, really. And one way to
Hmm.
find your ideal client, everyone, those of you listening, one way to find your ideal client is always to look for a reflection of you. Maybe it was you 10 years ago, maybe it was you 15 years ago, maybe it was you yesterday, but to find a reflection of you standing, and those will be the best people you can serve. So, Judy, tell us about your health challenge. I know the listeners want to know about your health challenge and how
Okay.
that figures into and just give us the short and sweet version of it, how
Yeah.
that figures into your work now as a book marketing mentor.
Well, you've been telling people to listen to those voices telling you, well, you love this. Do you still love it? Look for the match. I was ignoring my body at the
Mhm.
time. So this is late 2013. I was
Mm,
busy. I had lots of stuff going on until the day that every muscle in my back seized up in a yoga class. Needless to
mm.
say, I went to the doctor, and then I wound up in the emergency room right after Christmas, when I was told I had cancer. They didn't know what kind yet. It
Mm,
turned out I had ovarian cancer, and I am BRCA2 positive. I inherited the gene from my father. I wound up, um, what I said to the doctor when he said, "You have cancer," I said, "Oh, well, how do I get well?" I didn't even take a beat. I just said, "Okay, so now what do I do?" And that was how I approached the entire process. I did things my way. I
mhm,
exercised all during my treatment. Of course, it was at a much lower level. I told
Mhm.
everybody that I was going through this because I didn't know the symptoms myself, or I would have gone in sooner. And so consequently, there were about 3 or 4 people who went to the doctor, found out what was going on with them. One who did turn out to have ovarian cancer. So I had a 6-month window from when I was diagnosed till when I was done with therapy. And I leaned into my resilience. I leaned into figuring out, let's eliminate the negatives in my life. And so I put on pause a couple of people's conversations. I
That's a nice
I
way to
did.
put it. You put on pause a
Well,
couple of people's conversations. Some of them I would have just deleted.
well, it turned out one wasn't ready to come back when I was ready to,
Mm,
resume that, because I only had a limited amount of energy that I could
right.
expend. And if
Mhm.
people wouldn't respect my boundaries, I couldn't do it. And this is so funny. A good friend who, she's brilliant. You probably have seen her work. Did you ever watch Fraggle Rock, or did you see Who is John Malkovich, the movie? She's a
Mhm.
puppeteer.
Mhm.
She makes the puppets. Well, anyway,
Awesome.
she's still a friend, and she was helping pack. I couldn't pack. We had to move. Right, right. This was a perfect storm. We had to move, and I had to let other people do things for me. And she said,
Mm.
"Don't." She said, "Don't look, because they're not packing the boxes the way that you would, but they're doing it." And so I
All
had
right.
to ask for help.
I gotta pause you for a second. I want everyone to hear this, okay? We're finding wisdom, huge wisdom here. And like you said, when you have a health crisis and there's only so much energy, what is really essential comes up and the rest just drops away, right? You realize, oh, who cares about that? I don't care about cleaning out the shed, or oh, it's okay that I don't go do this homeowners meeting, or whatever it is that's not that
Oh yeah,
important. And you
yeah,
begin to be covetous of your time and your energy and your focus. Yep. Yeah, I
yep.
love it. That's so powerful. And you let people step in and help.
I did, because I have always been a volunteer. I have volunteered since I was little. Drove my mother nuts. She said, "Why are you doing?" I said, "Because I like doing it." And I would help people. But this was an opportunity. And like when you're doing a book, it takes a team. It's not a solo act. If you think it is, you're probably not going to get the result you really, really, really want. So people just I was in groups. They helped move our entire house in 2 days to a new location. They helped me. I had people who would drive me when my husband couldn't take me places. So I really learned it's okay to say, "I need something. Could you help me?" Because I had so much deposited in my bank account of community and giving.
Mhm.
I didn't deplete it, but people were willing and open about, "Let's help Judy. She needs it right now." And they knew that I was going to pay it forward. But that resilience is the real key. If
Mm.
something happens, how do you pivot? What do you do differently? What do you learn? And you have to use your resilience muscle. Just like, okay, so I've got arms. These I didn't have before cancer. This was
Mm.
after. And I was dedicated to getting stronger and healthier. Same thing applies to your book and your marketing. You got to do it with help. With
That's
help.
great. With help, yes. Well, everything is so much easier with help. I always am preaching to people, you want to do something, look for someone who's done it and get them to mentor you or coach you. So I love that. Yes, absolutely. And so this title of the book you have or haven't written can save someone's life.
Mhm.
Why this title today? Why this topic?
Well, I was inspired by another friend who helps people speak, because she had a very tiny voice, as did I when as a child, And she grew up in a household, her mother was ill, and so she was told to kind of shut it. And then she
Mhm.
realized as an adult, she got diagnosed with diabetes. And so
Mhm.
she learned everything she could, and then she thought she was going to go do talks about it and train people, but she wasn't yet claiming her voice. And
Mm.
so that stopped her. And then I realized when she told that story,
Mm.
I literally slapped myself. I said, oh, because I'm working on a memoir and it's called Gratitude Gumbo.
Mm.
I'll tell you the rest of that story later, but it's called Gratitude Gumbo. And I realized if I didn't know the symptoms of ovarian cancer, and if I hadn't been immediately connected to a support group by one of my friends who was a counselor who worked with
Mhm.
other people with ovarian cancer, I would have been sunk because the doctors are focused on one thing, but they're not focused on your whole body and your brain. They just want to get the disease either, under control, whatever. If I actually am considered cured, which they didn't used to say.
Mm.
However,
Mm.
because I had these other people, they told me things I didn't know, and then I told them things I learned. So you've gotta lean into this opportunity to
Mhm.
really share the message. And like I said, several other people just locally recognized their symptoms because they didn't know
Just
them.
from you
Because
sharing.
exactly. Because they all of my symptoms mimic menopause. So I wasn't
Wow.
alarmed. I wasn't
Gotcha.
alarmed until I wound up, being
All right.
totally
So
messed up.
gratitude gumbo is about your whole experience talking with people, finding out what went on with them, sharing that, all of you,
Yeah,
the stuff that the doctors don't talk about because what they want to do is cut it out or radiate it out or whatever. But
right,
kill it basically.
right.
So let me ask you this because I mean, we have this
Yeah.
opportunity now to make a difference for people. In a short list, what are the symptoms of ovarian cancer? Because I do know, I have
Ah,
read that it is one of the least diagnosed cancers, like, or the latest diagnosed because whatever reason, it just doesn't get I think breast cancer gets most of the media attention.
yes, and that's because of Betty Ford, because she was the
Right.
president's wife at the time, and so she transformed how we perceive that.
Yep.
And if you haven't had your mammogram this year, go make your appointment. So with ovarian cancer, this is the very. I'm going to leave the one to the end that is the trigger that got me there. So you might be feeling a little bit puffy. You might
Mhm.
be having some issues with peeing. I'm just
Mm.
going to say it. Yeah, you might just have some problems there. You might be feeling
You
tired.
mean having difficulty uh, with volume of peeing or
Yep, with
okay.
volume
So
and
like
also
you need to
just
pee, but you
difficulty.
can't. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit of trouble, or that it's more frequent. It might also affect your bowel movements, which I didn't have that one. You you might not be hungry. You might
Mm.
have a sudden weight gain or a sudden weight loss.
Mm.
And then here was the kicker for me. I said you might be a little puffy. No, I had 5.5 liters of fluid in my abdominal cavity
Mhm.
when I was diagnosed. I could not eat. I could not eat. It wasn't that I wasn't I mean, I wasn't hungry either, but I couldn't eat. I could take a bite of food and I couldn't eat anything beyond that because your abdominal cavity, all your organs are floating around in there. But I had all this fluid and it was pressing on everything. So
Mm.
I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe either because it was pressing on my diaphragm, it was pressing on my
Mm.
stomach. yeah, I was kind of a mess. But that muscle seizure, that was a real kicker. But yeah, does that sound like menopause to you? Kind of. Almost
Some of it,
everything.
yeah,
Almost any
yeah.
of those. Yeah. It's sneaky. It's sneaky. And we're not trained to look for it. That's the other big thing is a lot of doctors, you could be seeing a doctor for your regular exam, whether it's a primary care physician or an OBGYN. If they aren't conversant, it'll get missed.
And so what are just really quickly, what is the test that you take? Like, is there a test that
Oh,
you or is there a screening test people
no,
can do? And you all who are
there's not
tuning
a,
in now, we're talking about ovarian cancer, which is what Judy had and did not realize the symptoms because there's not a lot publicized
no,
about it, at least not to the level
no,
of things like breast cancer.
not
There's
at
not a
all.
particular test?
There's not a definitive test that you can take for screening. If there is a
Mm,
history of cancer in your family, almost anywhere in the world you can get a test, you can get a genetic test that will screen and see if there are any genetic markers. Had I known both, okay, so when my father was the carrier in my family,
mhm.
he had cancer, but it was, this was 50 years ago, and there wasn't the level of testing. And in fact, even in the last 10 years from when I had the test done, which was after I was diagnosed, it's also improved dramatically. But if you have any close relatives, and I mean siblings, parents,
Mhm.
aunts, uncles, grandparents, get tested. If you are, I'm Ashkenazi Jewish descent, so there's a higher propensity. But guess what? It's not just the Jews. Uh, Asian Islanders,
Mm.
people Sephardic area of the
Uh-huh.
world, which is North Africa.
Mhm.
So you could be black skinned, dark skinned. You could
Mhm.
be Asian. You could
Mhm.
be like me, Eastern European. All of those groups have a high propensity of BRCA types of cancer, which includes ovarian, breast, prostate, and pancreatic. So
Wow.
having genetic testing makes sense for almost everybody, but especially if you've got a family history. And I was unaware, so I wasn't getting monitored. That was my other thing. I have a primary care physician who is a kick and a half. He said, if you wouldn't have been so healthy, we would have caught this sooner. And he was absolutely right.
That's fun.
It's kind of, it is funny, and we joke about it now, but I was stage 3C,
But
and there's 5 levels. So I was lucky. I was very lucky, and I responded immediately once I started chemotherapy.
mhm. Love that.
Yeah.
So, that's the irony. You were so healthy, so we didn't catch it. And I really
Yeah.
believe this points to the fact that we need to advocate for ourselves. We really do. We need to advocate for ourselves. I had a thyroid issue that wasn't diagnosed for years and years because it was a strange variation called reverse T3. And unless you did the specific test for it, unless you went to somebody who knew about that, it never
Yes.
showed up, right? I always looked normal on all the tests, and they'd be like, "We don't know what you're talking about. You're normal. Your thyroid is great." But
Right.
immediately when it was done, I got diagnosed and could start the appropriate thyroid medication. So, well,
Right.
something we can hear here, you all, is that the sharing, everybody listening, the sharing of knowledge amongst people, not just amongst the experts, because they're just wanting to take it out once it exists, the medical doctors, but
Right.
sharing amongst each other helps us always to circumvent problems and challenges, and it helps us when we have them. And I think this is so true, Judy. We've this is why it is so essential in business and life to have a great network, because then when you have a great network,
Yes.
like your friend who had written the caregiver's guide, who you helped her,
Yeah.
she worked with you basically and became your client and your friend, you know,
Mhm.
you knew once you had an issue in your family, you knew exactly what to do. You knew exactly where to go for resources.
Right.
And so many people in business try to go it alone. So many people try to go it
Ugh.
alone, you all. And when you're a bold business badass, a bold badass in business, guess what? You have no problem calling up people and saying, you know what? I don't know what to do. What should I do? Help me out here. And call somebody, who knows, right? Call someone who will give you good counsel, right? Don't, call somebody who has
Yeah.
experience in that area. But it saves us so much frustration. It saves us so much time, so much money. And there's nothing better
Yes.
than having someone call you and say, you know what? I know you know about this, and I don't know what's going on in my body or in my business. What do you recommend? And then we realize, wow, I've got something I can share. I can help someone. And that is
Yep.
really what it's all about. It's what it's all about. If you want to lead a life of meaning, a meaningful life,
Mhm.
then you're going to be serving. You're going to have an attitude of service. And that's what I hear in your story as well, Judy, is that you
Yeah.
had served people in so many volunteer capacities. You and I have that in common, that
Mhm.
when you get to a point and you need help, as 3 years ago when my brother passed, I needed help. And people came through and helped. And we had, my
Right.
daughter and I had a meal delivered for probably almost 2 months, one meal pretty much
Wow.
every day, because
Oh.
I was so overwhelmed emotionally, physically. I was the one taking care of everything. He left no will. He didn't, there was so much that he didn't take care of, and everything fell on my
Mhm.
shoulders because I was the only sibling and really the only
Yeah.
person who could or would deal with it in my family. So, it's so important, you all, to have that group, to belong to communities, business communities, spiritual
Mhm.
communities, book clubs. Yes, since we're talking about books, but have your communities,
Yeah.
because then not only can you help others, but you've got those resources. And when something happens, you can let people know and ask for help. So, Judy, let me ask
Yeah.
you, when people come to you, or when somebody has an interest, say, in writing their book, or they've already written their book, do they have to have already written it to come to you for book marketing?
No. No, no, no. I would prefer to talk to people when they're thinking about the book, or maybe they just have a book outline,
Hmm.
because I focus on nonfiction. That doesn't mean I can't help fiction writers, but business books are prescriptive. They're giving you, if you do this, and here's how to do it, and here's some case studies possibly, or here's a way to do it better. Then if you know that going in, you can tailor your book to those questions that people ask you. You can make sure that you're answering those questions. And this is a methodology that some people use, and I think it's a very effective one. What if you wrote the back cover copy first, and then you
Mm,
make sure you are hitting all those points when you go back to look, and you're doing your editing?
interesting.
That also, this is one of my key tips. If you have a book and you've got a chapter title, you could take each of those chapter titles and create articles, social posts, essays based
Mhm.
on each and every chapter title, and start sprinkling that out before you have published, after you've published, because you can repurpose everything. And that is a way to start building engagement, and also to find out, is this the book that people want?
Right.
You know,
Does this really interest people? You'll be able to gauge the engagement. I
exactly.
love that. What a great idea. So basically you're seeding into your social media the topics, the
Right.
chapter titles, the topics, the themes that are going to be in your book, and then seeing what gets the most engagement before you write it. Very important, because sometimes people will just create the book and then they may find out nobody really wants that book, and they have to do a
Oh,
huge editing rehaul. And then,
right.
yeah, exactly. And then it's like, oh my God. But how about having that feedback prior to writing? And even how about pre-selling your book? You can do what Charles Dickens did, and he published a bit at a time and earned
Right.
money each time. Yeah, very smart. So Judy,
And
they
that's
can
happening
really
again. That's happening again with some of the different ways that you can publish and get paid. So sorry, I didn't
exactly
mean to
on
walk over you.
Amazon authors. A lot of Amazon authors, this is, they get people for a series. They start a series and they get some, people get involved in the first series, and then in the first of the series, and then they bring more, and then they bring more, and build this readership that is waiting for the
Right.
next book. How cool is that, to have
Exactly.
people wait
Oh,
for your next book? Like, when is it going to be done? When is it going to be done? When is it going to be done?
yep.
That's what we want,
Yep.
right? So give us it's about time for us to wrap, but give us a few more tips, like that fantastic tip. Those of you who are just joining, Judy was talking about write the back of your book first, write the back cover. What would be on the back cover of your book that somebody would be
Yep.
saying about your book? And then use that to say, oh, okay, I could write, this is a good chapter. This would be a good chapter. Start from the smaller synopsis, so to speak, on the back of the
Mm-hmm.
the book, and figure out what the key components are that way, instead of just kind of going and starting it. I have something kind of cool I could show everybody, actually,
Oh,
Judy. This
yes,
is sort of fun. We
please.
could do some show and tell.
Yeah.
Why not? This is
Yeah.
fun, because
Woohoo.
right? Okay, hold on,
I
everybody.
know.
Now, you can tell this is live.
Exactly.
We didn't plan this ahead of time, so all right. So right here, woo, hello. Oh, it's
Oh,
been eaten by one of our rescue dogs at the bottom. But this right here, look, everybody,
I'm
that
sorry. This
wasn't
is so
Bunny this
funny.
time.
This is so funny.
That was Conchita. That was the other one. I call her the wild child. They're both wild, though. All right. So this is a special way, and I'm very visual, so it works for me, of putting
Yes.
things together that I learned from one of my mentors, Rachel Jane Groover. And it was, just on a post-it note, write down, you're just going to
Yeah.
write down everything you can think of that you want to put in that book.
Yep.
And it's actually color coded according to the emotional charge. So those things that are hot pink are really
Oh,
highly emotionally charged. There's some that are neutral, and then there are others that are neutral, just sort of factual, and then there are others
yeah.
that are a lower grade of emotional charge. And then you put them on and arrange into 3 sections. So the
Yes.
beginning, the middle, and the end of the book. And the great thing is, because they're post-it notes, you can move them around. And this is how I wrote my Victim to Victor book, that I'm still revising. And it's also how, well, I wrote it and then went through and organized each post-it note. So you go through your writing and just, what are all the ideas, put them on a post-it note, and then arrange it. Pretty cool way to do it. And
I
it's
love it.
very visual, and you can move stuff around. So you suggested to have people write the back of the book cover. Give them just a couple of more tips that they could use if they're
Okay.
thinking, I really have an idea. How do I get started writing a book? How do I organize it?
Well, there are actually tools. There are digital tools too, but I like yours a little bit better. I use a tool called Scrivener, which lets me, it has a corkboard view. So I could take each of those notes and do exactly what you said. And you can color coordinate it. You can completely customize how you are keeping track of your writing, and you don't have to worry about doing it in sequence because you can move everything around. Having a word processor, you can take those documents and then put them in
Mm-hmm.
a Scrivener, You can do all your research and put it into Scrivener, including, say you did some search on the internet, you found a web page that was helpful. You can pop that in. All of that works for you. It's called Scrivener. So just like a scribe, but
I think I put it over in the
Scrivener.
chat.
Okay.
Scrivener. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that
It's a
Nathaniel
marvelous
Hawthorne
tool.
short story, Bartleby the Scrivener. Remember that short story by
Yes.
Nathaniel Hawthorne? That was
Yes,
such a great story. But yeah,
it
Scrivener as
is.
in the writer. Yes. So I love that. I love that. What a great tool. So people could use Scrivener to start
They
organizing.
can do that.
And
I've got one more.
also, as you suggested earlier, they can seed things in social media, seed some of these topics and see which posts are getting the most engagement. So let's say you're thinking about writing a book on how to care give, since we were talking about that earlier. And then you're
Right.
thinking about writing a book about how to parent your children while you're taking care of your elderly parents, right?
Oh God.
You can seed some of these ideas out in social media and see what people are more receptive to and more interested in, so that when you write the book,
Yep.
you're really writing the book they want. You know what? I did a survey when I wrote my first books
Yes.
that are non-academic. I did a survey,
Mm-hmm.
Judy. I said, I listed like 6 or 8 things and just said, and this is many years ago, like 15 years ago. And I said, I want you all to just tell me, rate 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, whatever it was. It was about 6 or 8 topics. Which of these is most interesting to you? And by and far, the topic of prosperity was. And so that was how my Get Out of Debt, Get On with Your Life, Every Woman's Guide to Creating Prosperity with What You Have Right Now. That is how that book started. I started with one book, then I
Mm-hmm.
added another book, then I added an audio. And I would say
Right.
to everybody, just start, because then you can add,
Yeah.
but don't just sell a book.
Mm-mm.
Now you can have a book with a music download. You can have a book with videos online that people can watch where you
Yes.
talk about the backdrop of a chapter. You can have a book with a web page. I just have written my first children's book, Judy, and I want to have recipes because
That's what's in
it's
my book
got
too.
arepas, which
Recipes.
are toiletries. Yes,
Oh,
recipes. You and I will have to have a discussion about all the cool things we can put in
yeah.
our books. I also want to do cutouts. I want to do a piece of origami that the children can fold to make, because one of the characters is a bird called Whimsy. So, think about it, you all. You should never, I've always said this in business, don't ever sell one thing. You write one
No.
book, then you write another, then you write another. And in fact, I've got mine back here, and I'll tell you all, I got some of them. I'll tell you all, I started with this one. This is the big
Yeah.
one. I wish that were me, but it's not. But the woman with all the money and the motorcycle.
Oh.
I wrote this one. And then I said, you know what? That's more about raising your prosperity consciousness. I actually need to have one that's about the specific things, 50 nifty ways to prosper right now. So let me write that
Mm-hmm.
where people can get into the nuts and bolts, the strategies that you do. And then from there, I thought, well, some people aren't going to read. So let me record a CD with my friend interviewing me.
Yes.
And it became a package. Then I thought, well, let me do a door knocker that somebody can use so they can have their creative time. So I have a door knocker, which is not in this one for some reason, that says, it says no energy vampires allowed. And on the other side, it says, do not disturb smart woman at work. So somebody could take this and put it on their door when they're reading or they're working on their prosperity. So you all, there's so much that we can do that's creative. So don't
Yeah.
just think about just the book itself. So Judy, give us a couple more ideas, and then I want
Okay.
to give you an opportunity to share a freebie or something with our group before we wrap up here. What are some
Okay.
more ideas they
Well,
can use for the book to get started, or to make it less onerous, less
all right.
intimidating to start writing?
I would imagine a number of you have done a class, a training. Maybe you've got your most frequently asked questions your clients have been asking you. Any of those things can turn into a book. And Dr. Barnsley just gave you some brilliant ideas. Now think about this. If you've done a training, why not turn that into a book? And a book is not just print, as you just heard. It could be print, it could be audio, it could be an ebook, it could be a podcast. And there's so many opportunities. Maybe you've got a friend who wants to help you turn that presentation into a video. So you, from one idea right there. So maybe your first book isn't 50,000 words. Doesn't have to be. There isn't the, there aren't the book police that said it has to be a certain length. So maybe your first book is a little shorter. But if you've got this topic and you've got lots of different ideas, the idea of creating a series is one of the best ways to sell a book, because people want more, but they also want to go deep and master before they move on. So for instance, I have one of my clients is an enrolled agent. She does tax preparation. She writes fiction and nonfiction. And for her nonfiction, she wrote about, the first book was called Taxpertise. Now that book was commissioned by Entrepreneur Press that was alive at the time. But then she did 2 more books in that vein. She did one for the creative mind, and she did one that was kind of a mashup of being a murder mystery and how to pay attention to, tracking your taxes when you are in business for yourself. So she had fun with that, so there's probably something that you're doing that you could have fun with. And maybe you could partner with a nonprofit or a for-profit business. So for me, I am Gratitude Gumbo. Not only is it's short parts of my story in the memoir, so each one is a standalone chapter, and I have recipes because I learned how to do recipe hacking when I was much younger. But now I recipe hack to get rid of the fat, to get rid of the sugar. I've got substitutes for almost everything. And I said, that's really the nuts and bolts of it, because there's so many other resources about, oh yeah, you can go get this test and that test and blah, blah, blah. That's not what people want to know. And I realized too, I started to make it too big of a book. It needs to be small, because the person who's reading this is either going through it, or it's a family member or a caregiver going through it. And how much attention span did I have at the time? I was like a fly. So
and by
you've
going
already
through
got
it, everyone,
material.
we're talking about cancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you've got to pay attention. So
I love it. And
your
when
audience,
we say going through it, if you're just tuning in, hang on a second, Judy. Hold on. If they're just tuning in, I just want to say, going through it, when we say that, we're talking about cancer, because not everybody, people pop in and out. So I just want to say that. So those of you who are listening, just started listening, we're talking about what do you do when you're going through cancer. And Judy has this Gratitude Gumbo book that she's writing that includes recipes. You know what I was thinking as you were talking, Judy?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, you could do a Gratitude Gumbo show. You could have a YouTube channel and you get on and cook the stuff and talk. And then take the transcriptions of that, and that can become a workbook or something else. You all, I really want you to hear, you don't have to write anymore. You don't have to sit down, take a pen, or sit down at your computer. In fact, so many of my books and everything I do, I just dictate it right into my phone. I do it easily. I open up email, because I know email's in the cloud. And if I ever lose my phone or I lose my computer crashes, I'll have it in my email and my Gmail. I'm serious. So I will always have a version of my book that's in an email too. just
Yep.
in the event that something happens. I have that. I'll always be able to get into my Gmail. So I just want to say to everybody, this is about today, not only taking your message, taking that pain, taking that hard thing, and using it to help others, to show them the way, to be a compass for them, but it's also about the fact that you don't have to struggle as you write your book. It can be
No,
a joyful thing where you're recording or you're doing a presentation and then you just hire somebody to transcribe it, or you use many of the
absolutely.
AI tools that will take a video and transcribe it for you. So Judy, we have got to wrap up, but what
Okay.
great content you've given us today. I love your story. I have to say, I'm super happy you're still on the planet and staying here.
10
And
years.
I think that those who are listening would agree. Yes, 10 years. It's 2013. And when you get a diagnosis like that, it really is way more than a wake-up call. People say it's a wake-up call, but it's way more than that. It's the moment where you
Yeah.
think about, well, what is really important to me? What is
Yeah.
important to me? And I think that's always a good question for all of us to consider. So, Judy, do you have a freebie that they can get from your website or something else you'd like to offer them? Because here's
Oh,
something
yes.
cool. We're doing a vault for Bold Badass Business, and it's going to be housed on my website so people can come. Those of you who are listening, even if you didn't necessarily hear last week's wonderful speaker, but you're here now, you can go and you can still access the freebies of all the incredible guests on Bold Badass Business. This is another way we like to serve. So that's going to be, we're going to include your goodies, Judy. What would you like to give everybody?
Okay. Well, if you go to my website, which is bookmarketingmentor.com, there is a pink button and it says gift. And in your gift is how to create, how you can create a thriving book garden. It's a playbook for cultivating your authority and growing your business, which is what we've been talking about today. So all you have to do is go there and sign up, and you're going to get the information in there, and I will be sending you the playbook, which is pretty darn fun. It's 3 ways to grow your visibility without marketing hassle.
Okay, hang on. Let me
Does that
pause for a
sound good?
It sounds fabulous. So bookmarketingmentor.com, go to the pink
Yes,
button, get your gift. And the title is How
yes.
You Can Create a Thriving what?
Book garden, but
Book
it's not
garden.
just about books. It's about how you can organically grow your visibility without the marketing hassle. This applies
I
to
love it.
all businesses.
It applies how to organically grow your business visibility. And we all know if you want to be the go-to person in your field and you want people to say, oh, wow, you have to talk to so and so, you've got to be visible and also to cut through the glutted online marketplace. Okay, I captured that up here. Again, everybody, for those of you who are listening and can't see the chat for some reason, bookmarketingmentor.com. You'll get your free gift, How You Can Create a Thriving Book Garden and also organically grow your business visibility. And you all know that you can go to spirited-solutions.com, spirited, SPIRITED-solutions.com, and help yourself to my ebook, which is fun and informative. I call it Fun-tabulous, which is how to overcome overwhelm in 7 easy steps. So no need to feel overwhelmed. Just go grab that book, go grab Judy's book, and you can begin to really shape your thoughts, your message, your experiences, your skills into a narrative that impacts impacts people's lives. So, Judy, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. You've been an incredible guest, hasn't she, everybody? Say yes. And I'll see you all next week at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific for every Friday for Bold Badass Business. And you are not going to believe who we have coming next week. You got to tune in. Bye now.